Okay.
So in Leviticus, it talks about purification and like the unclean and cleanliness of different things, like the different animals and things of that nature.
Okay, go talk to me now.
So when I was reading through, I was just trying to understand, like,
Leviticus 11 about dietary restrictions.
11, 12, 13.
Deuteronomy 14, right?
Yeah, and then like 11, 12, 13, leprosy, purification of women, like
Yeah,
that.
Leviticus, the purification, quarantining, people have infectious skin diseases, or a woman on a bleeding, on her monthly cycle, or she has a bleeding disorder, et cetera, et cetera. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so I was trying to understand what's the essence of those laws, because in the New Testament, Christ comes and I wouldn't say
essence of those laws.
Yeah, because when Christ comes and he declares foods clean, for example, or he allows the woman who
Mark 17, 18 to 23, that's misinterpreted. There he was not talking about foods are clean. He's saying foods are not what defile you, because your stomach takes the food and purges out, right?
Yeah.
Either because you go to the bathroom, etc. And so the food doesn't stain your soul because it comes out of you. Right. So that right there is not making a comment on the lawfulness of eating everything. It's in Romans 14:20 where Paul is talking about all foods are clean. Romans 14:20. But at the same time, Jesus' Jewish followers still kept the dietary restrictions even after Christ's ascension to heaven.
Right. Yeah, that's what that's because in Acts there's a whole question of
Acts chapter 10.
Eating separately.
Yes. What's the question, so I can help you?
So my question is trying to understand, like, what it was the purpose of these purification and like cleanliness and uncleanness distinctions, if the like essence of the law is to love thy neighbor and to care for other people. Like, what, like in the New Testament, these laws no longer pertain to us, right? They're no longer.
I don't know what you mean. It doesn't pertain to us. You're speaking generally. So when the law, Moses tells you don't sleep with your sister,
that pertains to us. That's a moral law. That's a moral law.
And where does the Bible distinguish between ceremonial and moral that you're doing? That says the ceremonial aspects are not binding on us, but the moral. Because you just contradict yourself, because you just said that Acts says that Peter and the rest kept those laws. So make up your mind, dude, because you've already come up with your own predisposition. Oh, that's moral. But wait, Peter didn't eat anything unclean. Is that moral too? So make up your mind, dude, because you're already assuming you're right and you know what you're talking about. Nadim.
No, I was trying to understand, like, so
why did you make that distinction? I know there's moral and ceremonial. Why did you make that distinction to say that these laws are not binding when I'm trying to make a point? Who told you they're not? Because I just gave you an example of Peter still honoring the dietary restrictions.
When I searched,
so why'd you make that distinction?
Well, when I searched it up on Google, the distinction it gave was that the food stuff and the
who said that?
Like, just an AI overview. It wasn't
AI. Okay, so AI is like the ninth archangel that came down. So let's come back to the point. How do you know these laws are done away with in Christ?
I don't. That's why I was coming here to understand that.
Well, when I came to answer you, you already said, "Oh, that's moral."
No, I'm not going to cut you off.
Okay, so let's come back to what I was trying to say. Who told you the laws were done away with? So you're saying sleeping with your sister is done away with?
No.
How do you know it's not done away with? Because the Bible nowhere tells you not to sleep with you. I mean, saying, let me be specific. New Testament, because I said Bible, New Testament. Where do you find the New Testament says don't sleep with your sister?
Isn't sexual immorality mentioned in the epistles?
And what is sexual immorality? Because Abraham married his half-sister. Was he being sexually immoral? See, again, you think you know. Abraham married his half-sister. That's in Genesis 20, verse 12. She is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not of my mother.
Yeah.
So was he being immoral? So how do you know what sexual morality is?
I actually don't know then.
Exactly. Because this naivete that Jesus done away with the laws, that is not true. The only time we know that a law in the Old Testament is not binding on us because the New Testament tells us we've been freed from it. So when the Bible talks about sexual morality, it doesn't define it in every detail. That's because the author is still assuming the sexual ethics of the Mosaic law, and it's still binding on us. So this blanket statement that Jesus did away with the laws, you're going to bury yourself. Because someone who knows the New Testament is saying, wait, Peter, the Jew, still kept dietary restrictions. And then the Jews in the book of Acts still went up to the temple, still observed animal sacrifices. Didn't they get the momo? You got it, but they didn't get it. So how are you going to answer that, Nadim?
No, I'm not trying to debate.
I'm not. You're not debating. I know. So I want you to answer now, because you already go, oh, Jesus did away with the laws. What laws did he do away with? I just showed you. Peter the Jew, Acts 10, tells God, I've never eaten anything unclean. The Jews in the book of Acts are going to the temple, observing morning and evening sacrifices, taking vows that require sacrifices for sin and guilt, such as a Nazirite vow. So what are you talking about?
So I guess I want to understand, like, in the cases of things that were done away with.
Like what? Give me, be specific.
An example is like not touching lepers, for example, right?
Who said that's what's been done away with? So there you go, assuming again.
But didn't Jesus heal the leper in the New Testament, in the gospel?
So Jesus, who's God, can touch a leper and heal him. And that means now coming into contact with lepers means it's been done away with.
So basically the law, so let me just, if I want to, I'm trying to understand this properly now. So the law isn't done away with.
No, I didn't say the law isn't done away with. What did I say? I said, the only time you'll know whether a specific commandment given by Moses has been done away with, because the New Testament has set you free from it. But who told you that the New Testament, the law of Christ, has set you free from every command of Moses?
It's not said in
exactly.
Yeah.
So unless, for example, I'll give you an example. Now I'm going to be in Acts 15. There's a debate. Should Gentiles get circumcised? No, Gentiles. They had to then gather, convene a meeting, trusting the Spirit to guide them with the decision of Jesus from heaven. And they decided, no, now, because I'm a Gentile, Jesus, through his church, told me I am freed from circumcision. See, that's how I know I don't need to get circumcised.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm told that in the New Testament. But it's not simply, oh, the new covenant, law of Christ, everything in the Old Testament is done away with. No, it hasn't. Here, I'm going to give you an example. Not everything in the law of Moses is done away with. In fact, there's a lot of things that the New Testament binds you to that is from Moses, because it assumes the validity, right, and binding authority of those commandments. Like I said, sexual ethics. I can show you adultery is condemned, fornication is condemned, right? Taking your stepmother to bed is condemned. But then if someone asks me for specifics, right? Well, what about sleeping with my sister? Come on, dummy, we know that's a sin. But then someone, hold on, you sure? Abraham married his half-sister. Genesis 20:12. Oh, really? But then later on in the law of Moses, you're forbidden from getting near your sister. So there are times in which what has become unlawful used to be lawful, right? And things that were prohibited are now permitted. You with me there?
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. You follow me, right?
Yeah, I understand. Like at some points in time, not abrogation, but the opposite of abrogation in some sense, like things can be added to the law or taken away given God's discretion on certain things. Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. You have to read your Bible carefully and understand the Old Testament's relation to New Testament, because the New Covenant, the law of Christ, supersedes and subsumes the law of Moses. The law of Moses is subject to the law of Christ, not the other way around. But the law of Christ incorporates and includes many of the commandments given by Moses. They haven't been done away with. Okay? Now watch here. Exodus 20:12. Watch here. Let me give you an example of something in the law of Moses that's still binding in the new covenant. Here. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be prolonged in the land which Yahweh your God gives you, right?
Yes.
Okay. Ephesians 6:1-3. What does Paul quote?
Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right.
Brother, did you hear me say don't use Mark 7:18-23 because that's not another example? Did this brother hear me or he didn't hear me? Because he just brought up Mark 7:18-19 because he's basing it on a translation of verse 19 that's not accurate. And yet he chimed in again, Mark 7:18-19. So what do I do with people when they chime in? Well, go ahead, read for me. Ephesians 6:1-3.
Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may be well with you, and that you may live long in the land.
That's Exodus 20:12, and he says it's still binding on you.
Yeah, that's true.
You understand?
Yeah.
This naive way of thinking, oh, it's been done away with. What do you mean it's been done away with? We're not under the law of Moses. Okay, I agree. But who told you that the law of Christ does not also include commands of Moses that you must still follow?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Sorry, I just had really bad catechesis when I was a Protestant for a bit.
Oh my goodness. What about now? What church are you in?
I'm now Catholic, but I'm going through the Bible from scratch again. That's why my lack of biblical knowledge.
No, it's all right, brother. I'm rocking your world. That's how I shake you, so that you can now. Oh boy, I better be now more careful. Genesis 20:12. What does Abraham say to Abimelech about Sarah?
Yeah, he says, besides, she actually is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. I remember that.
There you go. But now, when Moses comes, you better not marry or have sex with your half sister, or even your stepsister.
Yeah, and I think there's. Would you say that like even the stricter rules on what constitutes a burnt offering is also
stricter rules on what?
On what constitutes a burnt offering is an example, because like when Abraham gives burnt offerings, it's not specified what it is, but like when it comes to Moses, it's more
In other words, they already knew about burnt offerings, didn't they?
Yeah.
They also knew about giving the tithe, right?
Yeah.
So before the law of Moses, I don't know if the people are listening, but the tithe, giving a tenth of what you have, was already known and observed by the patriarchs before Moses, because Abraham gives a tithe to Melchizedek. Genesis 14:18-20, right? How do you know about the tithe? And then in Genesis 28:10-22, it says, Jacob said to God, if you bring me back to my father and you protect me, I will give you a tithe, a tenth of all that I own. How did Jacob know about the tithe, the tenth? Because what is codified in Moses are commands already known and observed by previous believers, but now they're codified, meaning now they're written in stone.
Right.
In Genesis, you'll find that what later is spelled out in detail or mentioned and written in stone and now binding upon the Israelites were commands already known and observed and carried out by believers long before Moses, such as the burnt offering. Do you know when is one of the earliest references and mentions to the burnt offering?
Is it when Abraham makes a covenant with God in Genesis chapter 7 or 8? 8. Yeah, it's 8.
No, it's Noah.
Oh, okay. After the flood.
Genesis 8:20-21, exactly. Noah. That's why he brought 7 clean animals and clean birds. Not just brought animals 2 by 2. It says he also brought in 7 clean animals and 7 clean birds, because he knew he would have to then offer a burnt offering on an altar in order to please God for his favor in saving him and his household. Read Genesis 8:20-21 for me.
Yeah. Then Noah built an altar to Yahweh and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Yahweh smelled the soothing aroma. And Yahweh said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. And I will never strike again down every living thing as I have done.
So already Noah knew about building an altar and offering clean sacrifices as a burnt offering to appease God, please God, delight God, right?
Yeah, it even says clean. Yeah.
Yep, clean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you can't, because you can't offer anything unclean. Now, guys, if you don't know what that means they already knew to differentiate between animals that God would accept and birds that God would accept against animals and birds that were not acceptable. So already at the time of Noah, the author talks about clean versus unclean animals and birds. But where is it fully delineated? Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14. Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14 gives you a list of unclean animals and birds versus clean animals and birds. And yet, long before Moses codified it, wrote it down, they already knew to distinguish between clean and unclean animals and birds. And they knew that God will only accept clean animals and birds. You see how much they knew before Moses showed up and wrote it down in stone? Right?
Yeah, quite a lot. Yeah.
Not only that, Job himself knew. Watch here. Job. I'm going to open up to see what Job is, who he is. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. So, for all intents and purposes, he's not an Israelite. Some actually think he's probably even a descendant of Esau. And some actually think this book is older than the oldest book of the Old Testament. Some actually think Moses even wrote it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so anyway. But now watch in Job 1, verses 4 and 5. Read for me verses 4 and 5.
His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one on his day, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them.
Yeah.
Now it happened when the days of feasting had completed their cycle, that Job would send and set them apart as holy. And he would rise up early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, perhaps my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus Job did continually.
So Job already knew about the necessity of offering burnt offerings to atone for sin, so God wouldn't be angry against sins committed, whether intentionally or unintentionally?
Yes, he did.
Okay, Job 42, verses 7 to 10. Job 42, verses 7 to 10.
Now it happened after Yahweh had spoken these words to Job, that Yahweh said to Eliphaz and the Temanite, my anger burns against you and against your 2 friends, because you have not spoken of me what is right as my servant Job has. So now take for yourselves 7 bulls and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up a burnt offering for yourselves.
How many bulls and rams?
7 of each.
7 of each, huh?
My servant Job will pray for you. For
not only 7 bulls and rams as a burnt offering, but you need a priest to then officiate and then intercede.
Yeah.
So you need a mediator to then pray and intercede for God to accept his mediation and your sacrifices in order to forgive you.
Yeah, which is a prefigurement of the Levitical priesthood right there. Yeah.
Wow. And he's not even a Levitical priest, huh?
Yeah.
Keep reading, finish it.
For I will accept him so that I may not do with you according to your folly, because you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. So Eliphaz the Temanite and Bildad the Shuhite and Zophar the Neamathite went and did as Yahweh told them, and Yahweh accepted Job.
And read verse 10.
And Yahweh restored the fortunes of Job when he had prayed for his friends, and Yahweh increased all that Job had twofold.
So you guys are seeing a pattern? Long before Moses wrote it down and codified it, these holy men of God knew about burnt offerings. They knew about building altars. They knew about tithing. They also knew about a host of laws. I'll give you an example. In Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 to 10, you have the Levirate law, right? The Levirate law is, if I have a wife and I die childless, my brother then must marry her and sire a child for me to preserve my line. And if he refuses to do so, she then comes to the judges and tells them that he doesn't want to honor his brother to preserve seed for him. So she takes the shoe, right, and spits, right? Deuteronomy 25, 5 to 10, correct?
Yeah. Isn't that also, there's a prefigurement that in Genesis with Tamar?
Yep, that's Genesis 38. Judah already did that. Judah knew about it, right?
Yeah.
How did Judah know about that law? Because his son, was evil, and God struck him down. Then his brother Onan went, but instead of getting his widow pregnant, he would then spill the seed on the ground, and God struck him down.
Yeah.
So are you guys seeing a pattern here? The pattern is many of the laws of Moses that he wrote down and codified were already known and observed and practiced by the holy men of God. Right? See that? Then the elders of the city shall summon and speak to him, and if he stands, says, I do not desire to take her, then his brother's wife shall come to him in the sight of the elders and pull off sand off his face and spit in his face. Right? So what's my point here? Just like you had commandments that were already known and carried out long before Moses, and Moses simply codifies them, writes them down, reiterates them, but didn't come up with them for the first time. But there are a lot of things that they did that later generations didn't do, and a lot of things they didn't do that later generations did. You have a similar phenomenon with the law of Christ. There are a lot of commands of the past still part of the law of Christ, and commands that now you've been freed from, and new commands that make up the law of Christ. So the serious student of the Bible has to then slowly, meticulously, prayerfully meditate to then see which commands Christ has freed me from as a Christian under the new covenant, which commands are still binding upon me.
Yeah. And I guess being under the magisterium makes it a little bit easier for us as Catholics. Yeah.
Well, when the church has then decided for you and you trust this is the church of Christ, then you submit to it. Yeah. But if you are sola scriptura, tota scriptura, in other words, if you believe in the authority of your church, whether you're Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, Syrian Church, you then respect the laws, the canon laws of your church, because no one's putting a gun to your head to be part of that church. Once you of your own free will say, this is the church that I believe Christ has established and preserved and wants me to be a part of, you submit to it. But when you come to sola scriptura, tota scriptura, you got problems. I'll give you an example. Someone who just follows the scriptures, do you know for certain whether those commands in Leviticus, where you're not to approach your wife during her monthly cycle, are binding on you, or are you freed from?
I haven't read the Old Testament or New Testament, so I don't know. I don't know what the.
But you're not sola scriptura, you're not tota scriptura. So why are you answering? You got to go to the Catholic Church and see what
to the Catechism or the.
I'm talking about someone who follows sola scriptura, tota scriptura.
Sorry.
Can you tell me whether I, as a Christian who wants to honor the Lord in my marriage, am I to avoid my wife and not come into contact with her when she's in her monthly cycle? If you tell me I'm free, how do you know? What does the New Testament say I'm free? In fact, if you follow sola scriptura, tota scriptura, can you tell me I'm free from the Levirate law? Meaning, if my brother marries a woman and he dies childless and I'm the next in line, am I freed from then marrying her and then siring a child for my brother? That command is not binding on me? How do you know? if you follow sola scriptura, tota scriptura. Now, if you believe God has given you a church, and the Spirit guides the church, and the church has answered those questions, you submit. Right?
Right. Just like what they did with circumcision in the 1st century, like in the Council of Jerusalem.
But then the Protestants will say, well, that's in Scripture, and Scripture is God-breathed. Fine. Now that you follow sola scriptura, tota scriptura, am I freed from those commandments? Can I approach my wife during her monthly cycle? How do you know? Secondly, if I am married and you're my younger brother and I die childless, is Deuteronomy 25, 5-10 still binding on you? Or is that command something we've been loosed from? And how do you know if you follow sola scriptura, tota scriptura?